The slap echoed through the concrete hallway like a gunshot, sharp and humiliating, and every head in the police station turned at once. A homeless man stumbled sideways, his thin body folding in on itself as if it had been expecting the blow long before it came. In that exact second, a man in a black leather jacket stepped through the front doors, rain dripping from his beard and boots, his motorcycle helmet tucked under his arm. He had come in for something simple, something forgettable. Instead, he walked straight into a moment that would change every life in that building, including his own. Before the story pulls you any deeper, take a second and do something powerful. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in standing up when it would be easier to look away, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Small actions can spread big change. The biker stood still, frozen not by fear but by memory. Years ago, he had been that man on the floor, not homeless in name but invisible in every way that mattered. The smell of disinfectant and stale coffee mixed with rain-soaked fabric, dragging him back to nights spent sleeping behind warehouses, his hands shaking from hunger and cold. He saw the homeless man clutch his cheek, eyes lowered not in guilt but in surrender, and something inside the biker tightened until it hurt. Around them, officers pretended to shuffle papers, to type, to look busy. Silence filled the space where decency should have been. The biker was not a small man. His shoulders were broad from years on the road, his knuckles scarred from fixing engines and surviving fights he never went looking for. His vest bore the faded patches of a motorcycle club known more for noise than compassion, and he was used to being judged the moment he walked into a room. But what people didn't know was that he rode to outrun ghosts, not the law. He had clawed his way out of addiction, out of a life where every authority figure was either absent or abusive. He had promised himself long ago that if he ever stood on solid ground again, he wouldn't let someone else be crushed while he stayed silent. The homeless man was older than he first appeared, his face carved by years of sun, weather, and disappointment. A dirty blanket hung from his shoulders like a defeated flag. He had been brought in for loitering, for existing where he wasn't wanted, for having nowhere else to go. The slap had not been about enforcement. It had been about power. The biker could see that clearly, because he had seen it before, felt it before, tasted the bitterness of it on his own tongue. Every instinct told him to turn around, to walk back into the rain, to mind his own business. Challenging authority never ends cleanly, especially when you look like trouble even on your best day. His heart hammered against his ribs, not with fear of pain but fear of consequence. One wrong move could cost him his job at the garage, his probationary freedom, the fragile respect he had built with blood and patience. Doing the right thing always seemed to come with a bill you weren't sure you could pay. But then the homeless man looked up, just for a moment, and their eyes met. There was no anger there, no defiance. Only shame and exhaustion, the kind that sinks into your bones and tells you that you deserve whatever comes next. That look shattered the biker's hesitation. He took a step forward, boots heavy against the tile, the sound louder than it should have been. Conversations stopped. Even the buzzing fluorescent light seemed to pause. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't raise his hands. He stood there, solid and unyielding, his presence a wall where there had been none. He spoke calmly, forcing the moment into the open, forcing everyone to acknowledge what had just happened. He reminded the room, without insults or threats, that a badge was not a license to humiliate, that authority without humanity was just cruelty in uniform. His words were measured, but they landed hard. Because they were true, the tension became suffocating. A supervisor emerged from an office, drawn by the unnatural stillness. Eyes moved between the biker, the officer who had struck the man, and the homeless figure still crouched on the floor. The biker felt the weight of every stare, felt the risk settling on his shoulders like wet concrete. For a heartbeat, it seemed like the system would close ranks, like he would be escorted out in cuffs, his stand reduced to a cautionary tale. Instead, something unexpected happened. The supervisor asked questions. Real ones. The homeless man was helped to his feet, not roughly this time, and guided to a chair. A report was started. The officer was pulled aside, his posture suddenly smaller, the confidence leaking out of him as eyes of accountability replaced eyes of indifference. It wasn't justice, not fully, not yet, but it was a crack in the wall. And sometimes, that's how change begins. The biker stayed until the end, until the homeless man was offered a meal voucher, medical attention, and a call to a shelter outreach worker. He watched disbelief soften into cautious relief on the man's face. When it was over, when the adrenaline faded, the biker stepped back into the rain, hands trembling, unsure if he had just saved someone or ruined himself. The road home felt longer than usual, every mile filled with doubt. News travels fast in small cities. By morning, the story had spread, not with exaggeration but with clarity. A civilian had stood up. A line had been crossed and then uncrossed. The department announced an internal review. Body camera footage surfaced. Community leaders spoke. What shocked the whole station wasn't just the biker's reaction, but the ripple it created. Officers began to watch themselves more closely. People on the margins were treated, if not kindly, then at least carefully. Weeks later, the biker saw the homeless man again, this time outside a soup kitchen, cleaner, steadier, standing a little straighter. They nodded at each other, a quiet acknowledgement of shared humanity. No words were needed. The biker rode away feeling lighter than he had in years, understanding that strength wasn't in fists or engines or leather patches. It was in choosing to care when caring cost you something. If this story is reaching you right now, if you feel that tightness in your chest or that warmth behind your eyes, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and engage with the channel. Your support helps stories like this travel farther than silence ever could. Before the ending, here's a special request. Please comment below and tell us whether you would have spoken up in that moment, or if you've ever seen someone do the right thing when it mattered most. The world doesn't change all at once. It changes when ordinary people refuse to accept quiet cruelty as normal. It changes when a biker walks into a police station on a rainy day and decides that being human matters more than being safe. And it changes every time someone watching this chooses compassion over comfort, proving that hope is still very much alive.